The quiet power of dignity. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the downtown Manhattan bank, casting golden reflections on the polished floors. Clients in tailored suits waited in neat lines, clutching deposit slips and murmuring into phones. At the back of the line stood a woman in a navy blue power suit, her hair in soft natural curls, and a small leather folder tucked beneath her arm. She looked like she belonged on the cover of Forbes, calm, confident, radiant. Her name was Ava Henderson, CEO of Henderson Global Tech, a pioneering firm on the brink of sealing a $2 billion deal that would change the trajectory of clean energy across the U.S. Ava had arrived early that morning after a red-eye flight from Chicago. She could have sent her assistant, but she preferred to handle certain matters personally, especially when it involved wiring funds to finalize a life-altering partnership. After years of building her company from the ground up, brick by careful brick, this moment represented the summit of a lifetime of grit. She reached the teller window just as a young white man in his early 20s, name tag reading Brad, glanced up with visible impatience. "Next," he called. Ava stepped forward and gave him a polite nod. "Good morning. I need to initiate a wire transfer, please. I have the documents here." She handed over her folder containing her ID and corporate authorization forms. Brad barely glanced at the folder before snapping, "We need valid identification for transactions like these." "I assure you," she said evenly, "that's a government-issued ID. My company is." He cut her off, eyes narrowing. "Look, we don't have time for games. Either give me real identification or step aside." A few customers turned to look. Ava's voice remained steady, but her jaw clenched ever so slightly. "I am Ava Henderson, CEO of Henderson Global Tech. That ID is real, and I have every right to be here." Brad scoffed and, with a dismissive flick, threw her ID and folder onto the floor. Gasps rippled through the bank. Time seemed to stop. Ava slowly knelt, collected her belongings with quiet grace, and stood. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "Thank you for your time," turned on her heel, and walked out, leaving behind a stunned silence. She didn't cry. She didn't fume. Instead, she walked across the street to a smaller bank where she was greeted warmly and treated with respect. Within 30 minutes, the transaction was complete. That $2 billion wire transfer. It was to be part of a joint investment with Stanton National Bank, the very bank she'd just left. Back at her hotel, Ava made one call, to the chairman of Stanton's board, Charles Rennick, an old-school executive who had been courting her company's business for months. "Charles," she said calmly, "I've made other arrangements. Our values need to align, and they don't." Stunned silence on the other end. "But, the deal, Ava, this could transform your industry." "Yes," she replied, "and I'll do it. Just not with a partner who doesn't recognize the dignity of every person walking through their doors." By that afternoon, the story had made its way to the bank's upper floors. Surveillance footage was reviewed. Clients who had witnessed the event began posting about it on social media. One post went viral. "She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She just walked away, with $2 billion in her pocket. Grace is power." Brad was let go the same day. The bank issued a formal apology. But the damage was already done. In the days that followed, headlines erupted across business networks. Black woman CEO pulls $2 billion deal after public disrespect, industry takes note. When dignity speaks louder than words. Ava Henderson sets a new standard for business ethics. But Ava didn't bask in the attention. She quietly returned to her company, gathered her team, and moved forward with a smaller community-oriented bank based in Atlanta. One known not just for its profits, but for its commitment to integrity and diversity. The new partnership led to thousands of clean energy jobs in underserved communities. Her decision to walk away that day inspired an entire generation of entrepreneurs, especially women of color, who saw in her a reflection of resilience, dignity, and power that didn't need to shout to be heard. One day, months later, Ava was invited to speak at a youth entrepreneurship summit in Harlem. A young girl, maybe 16, stood up during the Q&A session and said, "Miss Henderson, how did you not lose your temper that day at the bank?" "I don't know if I could have been that strong." Ava smiled gently. Sometimes, strength isn't about how loud you can get, it's about knowing your worth, even when others don't. You don't always have to fight battles with fists or fury. Walk away when you must. But walk away with purpose. Because how you walk away can be louder than anything you say. The room burst into applause. That moment wasn't just about business anymore. It was about legacy. Years from that day, when Ava was honored with a presidential medal for her contributions to both industry and social justice, she reflected not on the money she had moved, but on the message she had left behind. That respect isn't a privilege, it's a right. And true power never needs to humiliate to prove itself. And so, her story lived on, not just in boardrooms, but in classrooms, coffee shops, and conversations where people asked themselves, what would Ava do? She taught the world a lesson not in profit, but in principle. And all she had to do, was pick up her ID, and walk away.